Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the week that was. My name is Saeed Khan, and also welcome to a brand new year. 2023 is upon us, so Happy New Year, or as Eddie Murphy said in Trading Places, Merry New Year. That just happened to be on the other day, and of course had to watch it no matter what point I watched it from.
Well, it's like Goodfellas. Whenever it comes on, you just got to start watching the rest of it.
You gotta start watching it, especially when Joe Pesci's talking about Ping and that whole scene in the restaurant. Okay, well, 2023 has already begun with a rather momentous news cycle. We're barely 6 days into the year, and of course today is the second anniversary of the insurrection, where Capitol Hill was stormed, seemingly at the behest of former President Donald Trump. And it seems as though you don't have to have people storming the Capitol from outside when there is enough turmoil within. As of the airing of this show, we are now 11 votes in for the effort to elect a Speaker of the House. So as Spinal Tap would say, this House goes to an 11. And probably within another half hour, as we are on the air here, there will be no doubt an attempt for a 12th vote. Kevin McCarthy, it seems, has been running for this particular position ever since he became the minority leader in the House. And now there is talk about a series of Faustian bargains that he's made with a group of 20 rather steadfast GOPers who are holding fast. If you have a bingo card, I assure you it should be in invisible ink, because you cannot tell who's on the side of Kevin McCarthy and who is not. In fact, Marjorie Taylor Greene herself is now coming out and shilling for McCarthy and is getting into a verbal catfight with none other than Colorado Congressperson-elect. And by the way, all of them are representatives elect because they haven't been sworn in yet, because there's no speaker. Lauren Boebert, who of course is going to the mat for anybody but McCarthy. What the hell is going on?
I have a quick video. I have a quick video before we...
McCarthy can't get over the hills because a group of about 20 super right-wing holdouts are refusing to go along with the majority. Circus jerk Matt Gaetz of Florida is one of them. He's particularly adamant he will not vote for Kevin McCarthy. And this morning he went so far as to nominate his old pal Mar-a-Lago for Speaker.
And so I nominate President Trump because we must make our country great again, and he can start by making the House of Representatives great again.
What a douchebag that guy is. Before we go on, though, can I ask a question, Saeed?
Yeah.
Because I haven't checked the news yet this morning on this
one.
Why do they keep having votes if after every giveaway the total turns out to be the same? I mean, what is the point of having yet another humiliating you lose vote when, what's he offering this for? I mean, isn't there usually a quid pro quo?
I think he's just trying to wear people down. He's like, okay, I'm in it. You want to have another vote? Let's have another vote. Let's just keep going. And he goes, but I'm not going away. Things aren't changing. Who knows? The last, what was it, 133 votes the last time they went through this process. I think he's just trying to wear people down and embarrass, really. I mean, McCarthy doesn't care if he embarrasses the Republican Party or the United States for that matter, but he wants that job so bad. It's funny, Jimmy Kimmel, in part of that dialogue there, he talks about, he goes, how is McCarthy moving into the speaker's office already? He says it's like showing up with a toothbrush for a Tinder date.
He doesn't seem to have an embarrassment gene. And certainly people like Matt Gaetz, who can stand up and make an ass of himself with a statement like that, it's so cringeworthy. And yet, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Does he really think these people are going to run out of steam? I don't think they are. But
he gave up so much to get nothing. If he do get the votes, is he going to change his name to Charlie? And he's going to be sitting on people's laps. He's going to basically he's going to have no power, no control, and these 20 people, these I don't even know what they are, because it's unbelievable that they hijacked the Republican Party. There's no question.
So
Well,
for anybody
Nancy's-
under the age of 60, that was a reference to Edgar Bergen and his ventriloquist dummy Charlie McCarthy. Edgar Bergen, of course, being a very renowned ventriloquist, and also the father of another vague reference for anyone under 60, Candace Bergen. So anyway, Tiffany, go ahead.
I love Murphy Brown, but to Nancy's question about why they're continuing to vote like this, I really think it's a tactic on McCarthy's part. If you watch the votes on either last night or 8 p.m. the night before, where they made the motion to adjourn, the Democrats want to stay in. They want this circus to continue to play out on the national stage, because it just shows what a complete and total mess the Republican Party is nationally, and even it echoes all the way down here to the state level in Michigan. So the longer this goes on for the Dems, that's the better. But if McCarthy moves away from a vote, that pressure is sort of gone, and everything is happening behind closed doors. And at some point, some GOP members are going to say, no, we don't want to, we're going to stay on the floor, and we're going to keep here until we get this done. Because there's a realistic part. Like, not only are the Congress people not sworn in, we don't have a sitting Congress, none of their staff members are getting paid right now. So at some point, all of this runs out of steam.
Well, also some of these
Matt Gaetz is going to start making his hookers like take IOUs, but go ahead.
Some of these Congress people elect, their kids have to go to school next week, and they can't just be sitting around playing with their devices on the in the seats behind them. Just incidentally, it was Albert Einstein who famously said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. But I think, in all seriousness, some of the concessions that it seems that McCarthy is making to the hard-nosed 20 include creating a new committee that will then look into federal agencies, including the FBI, to see if Congress people and others were unfairly surveilled, which of course then threatens the independence of such agencies. There's also talk about immunizing any and all Congress people who might have had something to do with January the 6th in enabling the insurrection in the first place. And then, of course, the Hunter Biden laptop committee, which I think the title is self-evident as far as what they're going to be doing. So it seems as though this goes well beyond just pimping for a particular committee chairmanship that McCarthy seems perfectly willing to go ahead and grant. The only question, it seems, is that since McCarthy has a real trouble keeping his promises, it seems that even the steadfast 20 are suspicious about whether he will honor these pledges that he's making.
I think Jim Jordan, you see him foaming at the mouth. He can't wait to get going on Hunter Biden and the FBI and all that. It's going to be such a mess. I mean, some of that, it'd probably be some interesting hearings. I mean, if they want to, talk about the FBI. I mean, if you talk to people at the FBI, which I have, I mean, they'll admit there were some, they've made some missteps in recent times, in recent years. And so it might be interesting. But the problem is Jim Jordan. I mean, can you imagine if Jim Jordan had been on the January 6th committee? It would have been a mess. It would have been just bullshit arguments and stupidity. So thankfully they kept him off that committee, but he's going to be running some of the show now. So.
Well, he's going to be chairing the Judiciary Committee, which is problematic enough to have that happen.
That's absolutely terrifying. And what I think, term limits has been on the table. I think is one of the things that the Freedom Caucus has been talking about, along with a number of other scary ideas, like being able to remove the Speaker of the House with a single nomination from a member of Congress.
Call for a vote to remove.
Call for a vote.
Right,
And so any of these things that he's going to give concessions on, I mean, the realistic result of this is that it's going to tie his hands behind his back when it comes to getting anything done on the Republican agenda. Because if they're going to be voting on appropriation bills over any certain amount, like $10 million, I think I heard one congressperson say they wanted to vote on yesterday, or any sort of things that were done by consensus before, if the Congress is going to be spending time on those sort of what would be routine, not so controversial issues instead of the real problems that our country is facing, his agenda is not going to get through. And so I think that that's the irony of what, this Freedom Caucus isn't realizing right now. Their ability to make change is going to be hindered by anything that they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about the Democrats in this? I mean, they have been incredibly consistent. Hakeem Jeffries, the presumptive minority leader, has come through with exactly 212 votes every single time in the 11 votes. I think the last time the left had that level of discipline was when they heard that they were banning lighters from Woodstock. I mean, it seems as though they're on message. Whatever kinds of fissures were there between moderate Democrats and progressives, everybody is in line. Do you think that there might be a deal that could be made where, I mean, there's talk about this. Ro Khanna from California, in fact, said he would be amenable to voting for a moderate Republican. I suppose when one shows up right after the unicorn does. What do you think is the strategy going on in the Democratic caucus now?
Well, you're saying that they're united, but I'm just waiting to see what AOC and them do, because I think they raring to throw some gasoline on the fire, because they can hold up they've been holding up the Democratic agenda when the Democrats had control of the House. They made a lot of noise.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to the Democrats being in control right now of their own party, it shows that we've gone through a peaceful transition of power from Nancy Pelosi, who's, led the caucus for a very long time and has done a really good job of getting things done from a Democratic agenda perspective. I don't think the Democrats have any incentive right now to make any sort of deal whatsoever until the Republicans start to get closer. And until then, the Democratic caucus should just sit back and watch the circus that's going down.
Make another bowl of popcorn.
Tiffany,
And as far as a moderate Republican, where are they? I don't know if we're in a position right now to find that person.
Tiffany, how much of that do you think is due to the confidence that they have that the Democrats run the Senate right now, so they know that there's a stopper there?
Yeah, I think there's some, but I think, and I would hope, and I don't know this to be true, but, coming from a leader, minority perspective, that the Democrats are using this time to build their agenda out. Because if McCarthy ultimately ends up putting in first and second term Congress people into leadership positions on important committees such as Judiciary or the Rules and Means or things like that, the Democratic congressional members who have experience and actually know how to whip up votes and get things done in Congress have an advantage if they've got a plan in place. And so my hope is that they're using this time to strategize what's going to happen after this circus ends.
I think the Democrats have made it clear they want nothing to do with McCarthy, and they're going to let him just flap in the wind. He made remarks last year saying that when he got the gavel from Nancy Pelosi, he was going to hit her with it, making stupid little remarks like that. He's just obviously
untrustworthy.
Yeah, after making all these statements after January 6th, which is our anniversary today, he then went down to visit Trump to kiss his ass. I think he has very little respect. I think people are voting for him because he seems like the most obvious person who obviously wants it more than anyone. So people want to accommodate him. But he's going to be, if he happens to get it, really anyone who gets it is, it's a tough job. And the Republicans have seen, Paul Ryan, Boehner have realized it's unmanageable with like the Tea Party and this and that, and now you have these right wing, fanatics. It's not going to be an easy job, and I can see why a lot of people, including Jim Jordan, don't want it. Jim Jordan just wants to be a shit kicker.
Did you hear what happened yesterday when somebody rose to nominate that guy Donalds? And he said, I rise to nominate a man who will be the first Black Speaker of the House.
Oh, yeah.
The Democrats all started chanting, Hakeem, Hakeem.
Yeah.
Hilarious. It's like, just give it to him.
Well, I mean, Don James is getting some attention on the Republican side after his speech yesterday too.
Oh, what did he do yesterday?
Well, if the Republicans want a first Black speaker, 8 of them, or 6 of them, or 7 of them can come over and vote for Jeffries.
For Hakeem Jeffries, yeah.
Yeah, if they truly want an African American, it's all bullshit, and this is what we're dealing with. Let them kill each other. That's what they're doing. It's chaos. It's chaos. Just let them. They're destroying the Republican Party. There's no question. I would say,
as a political junkie and somebody who always has music on in the background, over the last 2 days, I've actually rather enjoyed the white noise of these constant roll call votes, learning about, really every member of Congress's last name and how many, Joneses that we have in different states around the country.
Well, Jon Stewart said that C-SPAN is having its best season. So I think true for that. Yeah. But what about what's going on with MAGA? I mean, here you have some people who were pretty dyed in the wool, but Lauren Boebert, upon hearing that Donald Trump was beseeching people to vote for Kevin McCarthy, invoked Meatloaf by saying, I would do anything for Trump, but I won't do that. I mean, is this like the end of Schoolhouse Rock? Is this the end of Trump?
I think it is. I think it's just, we just don't know. I mean, he hasn't thrown in the towel yet, but I mean,
I don't believe so, Nancy.
You don't think so?
That guy's like it's like a fly. It's 100 below outside, and for whatever reason, there's a fly in your house. He unsurvived. This guy is not going away. Now, do we have the power that he had 4 years ago? No.
Yeah.
But he still can wreak havoc. He still can wreak havoc.
I would agree with that, but I guess my what I was trying to say is he's no longer the supreme leader that everybody bends the knee to. I mean, that we're seeing that happen now.
But is he more dangerous as a guerrilla fighter?
That's a good question.
He
could potentially be extremely dangerous. He's like a wounded animal now.
He's like a COVID virus. You just keep mutating in different forms. Every time you try to kill him, it comes back as Super Trump. Wait a minute, we have a vaccine for that. And now another Super Trump. He will not give up. And in the end, look, if he gets indicted, which, it's very likely he will somewhere, whether it's in Georgia, New York, D.C., he'll get indicted. He won't go to trial probably till next year. He'll use it as a campaign thing to say, they're coming after me, give me money, help me out. And then when him and DeSantis go at it, it's going to be a Texas death match. And then in the end, he's going to say, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to run as an independent.
The Patriot Party.
Yeah. And that's going to be the end of the Republican election.
Well, he's going to be the George Wallace, the Strom Thurmond, because they ran as independents, and George Wallace, they made a difference in these elections. He's not going away. He's there. He's not going away.
But he won't be the John Anderson. Here's my prediction. If he does go to trial in 2024, what would be probably very smart for him to do is, obviously the trial will be televised. He should have his defense attorneys run campaign ads as exhibits, because that way he gets free ad time. So that's because I don't know if he's going to be able to raise enough money to be able to do that. So then I think there's going to be objections to relevance, but I'm sure he'll probably find a way. Well, there's something happening, of course, here locally in Michigan with the announcement by Senior Senator Debbie Stabenow that she will not seek a 5th term as senator. She has been, of course, in the U.S. Senate since 2001, served the great state of Michigan, but now she has said that she wants to spend more time with her family, including her 96-year-old mother and her children and grandchildren. This opens up a really tantalizing series of possibilities as to whom might run for the open seat. Any predictions amongst you?
I think
Yes,
I think Alyssa Slotkin seems to be a friend of Washington who's sort of involved in politics. I said, who do you think? And she says I like Alyssa Slotkin. I think maybe Jocelyn Benson. I think she's a fairly ambitious person. I think you can't rule out John James, who is just the chameleon of the year, and then
the empty suit.
Yeah, the empty suit, and then you have Kevin Rinke, who ran a horrible campaign, had a lot of money, ran a horrible governor's campaign, and the guy is just not bright. So
I mean, how can you how come you haven't mentioned Tudor Dixon yet? Because I think Tudor Dixon is the obvious. Don't really. She's like she's good looking. She's got at least the Betsy DeVos backed her once. They might back her again. I don't see
too well in the gubernatorial.
Well, Stabenow should step down right now and get the Democrats a leg up. I say, why would you announce and wait 2 years and say she's a lame duck now?
Well, sorry, Adolph.
Yeah, she wants to wait 2 years to her mother's 98 years old now, right? I guess you want to wait till she's 96. But I'm just saying the bottom line is let Whitmer appoint someone. They need to pick a candidate. I say pick the strongest candidate, pick them, step down, appoint them to her seat, and they have a leg up on whoever the Republicans throw at her. But if we don't do it, we be on the verge of losing, because 2 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Look what happened at the Supreme Court.
This is a pretty deep bench, at least on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
I think, Mallory, you didn't mention Mallory McMorrow.
What about Garland Gilchrist?
Garland Gilchrist
threw his name's out there. Yeah.
The only problem is Garland Gilchrist doesn't have, he's been really in the background in the administration. I think, I don't know. It's possible.
But if Whitmer want to up his profile, that you push Stabenow and make her retire, and you appoint him. Yeah. There was all kind of rumors in the last 6 months about Stabenow quitting and the scenario around who's running for governor and who's running for mayor of Detroit, etc. So it's wide open. Who has the most money and who gets out there first is going to have a leg up on all these wannabes.
I'd say Garland Gilchrist is a very smart guy. I politically savvy. He's learning. He was really quite a neophyte coming in, but he might be a good candidate. I've never gotten the sense of his fighting.
He couldn't beat Janice Winfrey for city clerk.
Yeah, best thing ever happened to him.
Yeah, I know it did. Exactly.
It was a dead end job. It was a dead end job. You go nowhere with that. So that's the best thing that happened to him. Whitman made a smart pick.
Yeah, she did. It was a smart pick.
It was a smart pick.
Your point about
Tiffany,
him, your point about him or her resigning right now. The Democrats have a leg up for this seat no matter what. The Republican Party doesn't even have a kicker in Michigan right now.
Right.
They're in chaos. And so they're in chaos nationally. They're in chaos in the state. If the Senate race in the primary looks anything like the Republican primary for governor looks like, that's going to benefit whoever the ultimate Democratic candidate is. And the thing is, we've got, again, a sort of peaceful transition.
We got 5 or 6 people that can replace Stabenow. We are named them. Greg Mathis out here wants to run. I'm just telling you, all these people.
How about Jeffrey Feiger?
Look,
I don't know about Feiger.
And I would hope that Senator Stabenow and the wonderful sort of support network that she's built around the state of grassroots energy is going to come behind whoever the ultimate Democratic nominee is. And those are probably the conversations that are happening right now, because ultimately with some of these people, if Garland runs or Alyssa Slotkin runs or Jocelyn, there's a waterfall effect. And so we got to think not only about their possibility of winning in that Senate seat, but what happens, for what might be one of the most competitive congressional districts in the country.
So I'm gonna throw out some names here, and why don't you see what do you think about their prospects? First on the Republican side, Pete Meyer.
Pete Meyer would be a good.
That would be a good
great
choice
candidate.
for them.
That would be
a strong.
In a purple Michigan that has
Yeah.
Firmly renounced MAGA. That would be probably one of the smartest choices.
And people love Meyer, the story.
Okay.
Yeah, but that right wing faction don't love Meyer.
I know.
Yeah,
that's the good part.
Right.
Okay. Another name, Andy Levin.
He gave a seat away.
Yeah. I wouldn't rule. I mean, the Levin name still has some cachet here.
He tarnished
Michigan.
Levin tarnished
screwed
the
up.
name.
He screwed it up, and in a twist, the Jewish community, a lot of people in the Jewish community turned on him because of they didn't like his statements about Israel, and I don't know.
Well, which brings me to the next name, Rashida Tlaib.
Man.
Oh man, she got to go.
Statewide.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think she's got to go, but I think there's no fucking way.
I'm disappointed in Rashida Tlaib. I mean, I saw a very progressive person. I feel like she has, and this really bothers me. I feel like I thought it'd be great. We have a Palestinian voice in DC. I feel like she's done nothing to help her people. She's done more to help her brand by beating on her chest and saying I'm uncompromising and stuff like that. You can't get anywhere in the Middle East without some form of compromise. She is all about building her brand and has done nothing for the Palestinian people.
Well, she did nothing for the 13th district. That's why she left it.
Yeah.
And she's a fraud, been a fraud as a state rep. So no, I don't see her as a senator.
Okay, one more name dealing with brand names, Abdul El Sayed.
I'll give him
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's good. But he just hasn't gotten the traction to really. I mean, what did he come in second place in the primaries with Whitmer? Yeah,
but it was a sham to secretariat in the 73 Belmont margin. So he didn't come close.
Yeah, for some reason he's had a hard time building a real brand here.
I love the equine reference.
Yeah. For party politics, he's worked outside the party structure, and this is not a race that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be won as sort of a outsider candidate in the Democratic structure.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point, Tiffany. I mean, do you think then that the going rogue culture has sort of now dissipated, and people are looking for the quote unquote grown-ups and the establishment again?
I think that some people are, but certainly as evidenced by things that are happening in our state this week, we know that the going rogue culture is alive and well, and many, no matter what your politics are, if you're on the right or the left. But I think that when it comes to sort of leadership and an opportunity like this, for a U.S. Senate seat, particularly in a state where, we've had Democratic leadership at the federal level, I think for over 40 years at this point. And that's been something that's been unique about Michigan is what we've traditionally had sort of a split state legislature, but we've always had Democratic, national leadership. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of attention paid to continuing that, that legacy that we've held in the Senate.
I think one name we've forgotten, Charlie LaDuff. Don't rule it out. Look, he could run and have it filmed the whole time, and it'd be a Netflix special, even if he loses.
Charlie's contortions to endear himself to right-wing media like Fox have been a little painful to watch, but you never know. So
I think Charlie Langton has a better chance, but all right, that's just
Charlie
that's just
Langton.
Let her rip.
Right.
yeah.
So, speaking about the west side of the state, which is, of course, the home of Pete Meyer, we've got a bit of a shakeup in Ottawa County, adjacent to, of course, Kent County in Grand Rapids. Ottawa County being, of course, the home of Allendale, Michigan, the home of Grand Valley State University, as well as Grand Haven. It seems as though they are scrubbing their diversity office, and yet at the same time, to express that they do have some belief in diversity, they are appointing as county administrator John Gibbs, he who actually primaried Pete Meyer in the congressional seat out there, which of course cost the Republicans a seat that had been fairly strongly and stably held by the Republicans for at least the last 40 years, now is a Democratic seat, much to the chagrin of, you guessed it, Kevin McCarthy. And also appointing as health director Nathaniel Kelly. Nancy, I believe you might have a slight opinion about this.
It's funny. I wrote about this on my own personal blog yesterday, and somebody who used to live in Ottawa County said, Ottawa County is the Indiana of Michigan, and Jamestown Township, which was the birthplace of a group called Ottawa Impact, which is the super MAGA, ultra MAGA group that kind of pulled off this coup on the county commission, which led to all of these changes, is the Indiana of Ottawa County. So that tells you something right there. I mean, that's what I want to point out. I want to make sure that we understand this is Jamestown Township is in Ottawa County, and this is the township that defunded its own library by failing to pass a tax millage to keep it operating. It's going to close. I believe they have enough money to get through 2024, and then that's the end. So they won't have a public library anymore. This is what happens when this is ultra MAGA at work. I mean, you forgot the funniest part of all of this, which is in addition to this meeting where they fired the county administrator, hired John Gibbs, dissolved the DEI office, and fired the health administrator. They also changed the county's motto from "You belong here" to "Where freedom rings," or "Let freedom ring," or something like that. Something with freedom in it. I think it's "Where freedom rings." And it's just, I mean, it's ridiculous. This guy, Nathaniel Kelly, I saw some video of him taken he's got a master's degree from an online university that is a for-profit online university. He calls himself a industrial hygienist. And if you can tell me what that job title involves, I'll give you $1.
That means it's cleaning things up, Nancy.
But he was giving a speech at something called the America's. I can't make this shit up. America's Frontline Industrial Hygienists a conference, where he said that if he were in charge of health in Ottawa County and if he had been in charge of health in Ottawa County when the pandemic came along, he would send every household a kit. And in the kit, there would be vitamin D, zinc, a couple other vitamin C, a couple other bullshit supplements, ivermectin, and a neti pot. And do you know what a neti pot? Does everybody know what a neti pot is?
I'm a fan of the neti pot.
Oh my God. Of course you would be. It's like you got to go to Lengel's apartment and see, like, to the area to the left of the sink. You would think he was on like chemotherapy. There are so many
vitamin C. You mentioned vitamin C, vitamin D. I wish I was in Ottawa County. Right?
There is so much. There's so many bullshit woo supplements in Lengel's.
I got to ask this question, Alan. Were you a big fan of K-Tel and Ronco and buying things off the TV at 3:00 in the morning as well?
I learned my lesson from those.
Well, anyway, the neti pot is kind of like it's a pot about the size of when you order tea in a restaurant and they bring you like a little thing that will give you about 2 cups of tea. You brew it in the metal thing, and then you pour it into your teacup. You're supposed to fill it with warm salt water. Maybe the person who actually
saline solution or
so warm salt water, and literally pour it into your nose. and this is supposed to be nasal lavage. And
Well,
it
for
cleans-
those of us who have
Well-
sinus issues, it's a good thing.
Okay,
okay.
Alan,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, we're going to have to do our equivalent of the Tide Pod Challenge. We're going to have to use water from the Dead Sea in there.
Now we're talking.
Can Ottawa County become part of Wisconsin?
Maybe
Can
we'd have
we
to, we could saw it, we could saw around it and just push it out into Lake Michigan. But the
And Nancy,
yeah, a
by the
neti
way,
pot.
next time you come over, I'm hiding all my supplements.
All right. I can't believe you have time to even like eat with choking down all that crap every day.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a schedule for it. But anyway, the neti pot, is like, to me, is like is somebody who swims and hates the feeling of getting water in my nose. I can't imagine anything worse than taking a warm teapot of it and like pouring it in there every morning. But this is how he would have dealt with COVID. So I think it's fair to say that Ottawa County and
Well,
their
he's
health
sounding
department
better all the time now.
have gone insane.
Well, I mean, I think in fairness, what they're showing is that they're bucking this stereotype that people have that the real crazies in Michigan are in the Upper Peninsula. And so the fact that this is happening on the west side of the state shows that we're a little bit more, what was the word? Diverse.
Diverse, yeah.
But seriously, the motto used to be "You belong here."
Yeah. And they just and actually somebody said that motto in the proposal during this meeting to change it, they said something that model is a reflection of the Marxist attitudes that led to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, and so let freedom ring. So
I think I saw on a report out of Grand Rapids TV that the Attorney General's office is investigating Ottawa County because a lot of the decisions that they made at these meetings were never on the agenda.
Right.
And
I mean, they pulled some sort of parliamentary shenanigans
so they violated the Open Meetings Act.
Right, because this led
stuff.
to this was completely, it was out of the clear blue sky at their first meeting of the year, just like the hammer came down. I think also, just for anybody who's concerned and is waiting on their free neti pot, I believe Nathaniel Kelly's appointment has to be approved at the state level. And given his lack of credentials, even as an industrial hygienist, he probably will. My guess is it'll be blocked there. And in fact, I think I also read somewhere, I was kind of blasting through the news at kind of a high rate today, that they can't fire the health director, the last health director, without some kind of just cause or malfeasance, and they had none. So,
well,
and
I
of
think
course this whole group was born during the pandemic. Go ahead.
In anticipation of the prospect of him losing the confirmation, I think he has sent a water pick to every state legislator. So
try that in your nose, man.
As long as it's just a water pick and not another kind of pick.
Well, there have been, speaking of Lansing, a series of new laws that have gone into effect. One is a 21-cent increase in the state fuel tax, which is being felt immediately. But there's also sweeping tax cuts. There are issues dealing with expanding educational opportunities and requirements, as well as the Detroit public transportation system and updated school safety procedures. It seems as though the outgoing majority GOP legislature did put in some laws that are going to be affecting us. Do you see these having a net benefit for anybody?
Well, I think the $18 million for the toy train over a certain amount of time, that's a waste of money.
That was totally waste of money.
That's a waste of money. They could have done it gave that money to some other project.
Yeah, that I have to agree with Adolph on that one. That was ridiculous. I mean, the Q line, it's cute, but there were too many compromises made along the way. That should have been bus rapid transit, and it should go faster. I mean, I feel like I could walk faster than the Q line.
Right.
Somebody who lives and works directly on the Q line and should be able to take it to where I'm getting, it would take me 10 times as long to take the Q line.
Yeah,
so
I
I would say it's made to teach children how to ride subways in bigger cities.
Yeah.
I would take the Q line often to go downtown, which is about 2.5 miles from where I live. And it was usually 15, 20 minutes. So I thought the idea that they were talking about initially, like at least out to 8 Mile or Pontiac, you'd have to pack a lunch and a dinner before you got out to Pontiac. It should have been built in the middle of Woodward, not on the sides. First of all, it shouldn't go with traffic. It stops at traffic lights. There's a car parked on the track.
It's ridiculous.
It reminds us of the trolley they had on Washington Boulevard in the 80s.
They settled for half a loaf when they should have gone.
Right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not even a half a loaf. It's about 3 pizzas.
Yeah.
Well, there are 3 laws that, really caught my attention because I think they do have the possibility of making a big impact. One was the personal finance class that's going to go into high school curriculum, I think for 8th graders. I think that's something that's an amazing addition to our curriculum and something that's great that the legislature has done. It's something that's been lacking in public education for a long time. When I look back and I was in 8th grade, and I tell people this in other parts of the country, that I had boater safety and hunter safety as required courses in 8th grade.
Are you kidding me?
I'm thankful for that. Like, I am.
Where you go to school? Where you go to school at?
I went to school in K-Pac in a small town, but they were required classes.
You had that in K-Pac? We didn't even have that in Lapeer, and we were damn bigger than you.
Look, there's hunters and there's water in this state. So I think that these are important things for kids to know about. But finance is also one of those things. So that's one of them. The Crime Victim Compensation Fund, I think, is another one that they've expanded it to include emotional and psychological injury for people. We do have a Crime Victims Compensation Fund, which really helps alleviate some of the pain that crime victims feel in our state, where they don't maybe have civil causes of action to help them make up for those injustices that they've suffered. It's been very limited, however, to a physical injury in which you could recover, some sort of compensation for. And now this law will help it go a little bit broader. But then the one that's really sort of like sticking in my craw right now that bothers me is the so-called changes to consumer protection here in Michigan and increasing consumer protection when it comes to online sales. And, sure, any effort in that area is a great one, but Michigan's consumer protection law that is still in the books has been basically eviscerated for the last 20 years. And so when we talk about consumer protection in Michigan and we don't talk about restoring our actual Consumer Protection Act, I really just find it disingenuous. And I think that legislators need to really think about that.
We have Michigan has really poor consumer protection. I just wrote my legislator, which as far as I can tell, has not responded. I asked them to pass a law that every company that has like renewing your contract with a service or whatever every year, that they have to send you an email or something notifying you of that. Michigan does not have a law. California does, all these others. So a lot of us sign up for something not realizing, suddenly it's like, whoa, I've just got billed $70 for something I haven't used at all. So,
are you still getting a bill? Are you still getting a bill, Alan, for OnStar? Because I could go ahead and understand. Man, Tiffany, you're from K-Pac. You know how people from Lapeer, how we used to troll you? I used to call you a palindrome.
Yeah, we were. The cheerleaders had a cheer where we were a palindrome too, and in fact, it is.
Were you a cheerleader?
I was not.
Okay. Well, pretty blonde, it's you got to figure that. So
no. My basketball coach told me one thing, that I should just go run track because I was fast and all I had to do was turn left.
Oh, okay.
I actually find it presumptuous that you replied. Nancy could have been asking me the same question, but all right. So we got the cue.
Just one more point on the consumer protection stuff, and I will say, Alan, it's not that we don't have laws; it's that we have a really good Consumer Protection Act in Michigan, but over 20 years ago, our Supreme Court issued a decision that really made it unenforceable in any practical circumstance. The legislature could go back and fix it. There are some challenges that could come through the courts to fix it, but that hasn't happened yet. And it's very similar to some other things that we suffer in the state when it comes to protections for our people. We're the only state in the country where if you are injured by a prescription drug, if it kills you, if it, you know, causes you a heart attack, if it does anything, we're the only state in the country where you don't have a private right of action to sue the drug maker for that drug.
Wasn't that a giveaway to Pfizer, and then Pfizer turned around and abandoned the state anyway?
It was. It
Yeah,
was.
that's
It
what I
certainly
thought.
was. And you know, and it's a much bigger conversation that I think is happening in the legislature right now when it comes to, you know, the fairness to Michigan residents versus other states' residents, and, you know, what caps look like, you know, in Michigan, which would, you know, even if we do away with preemption, Michigan residents under the current rules are still going to get far less than they would in a private civil justice suit with these drug makers who know that they injure people than they would if they lived, you know, 100 miles down the road on the Ohio border, or, you know, in Indiana even. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Where, by the way, the gas is cheaper and the roads are still better. But we had an incident in Wayne County where a road official pleads guilty to embezzlement of $1.7 million in road division funds. This is Kevin Gunn. He's also been charged with conspiracy to defraud with one John Gibson. Is this just, as Bruce Hornsby would say, just the way it is?
Yep. I just have to say, and I haven't read deeply into this story, but it did say something about how he was stealing equipment from the roads department and then selling it. There was a case in Indiana when I lived there, where a guy who lived out in the country, he had some kind of farmette, was literally driving bulldozers off of the county, you know, public works lot down these country roads to his own house, keeping them there, and then eventually selling them, you know, online. And which I just find, how do you lose a fucking bulldozer, for Christ's sake? You know, but it's like, apparently it happens. Now, you know, it's like if this guy was stealing weed eaters or, you know, leaf blowers or something like that, it would be easier to understand. But I mean, good Lord.
Well,
I mean,
you lose it.
It's Indiana, Nancy.
I know it's Indiana, but this was happening. But this guy in Bloomfield, it was happening here. So I want to know what he was stealing.
Well, the way I understand it is it was a free press investigation that sort of started this, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Those of you in the media probably know more than I do, but it was more than that. It's sort of taking the funds from the department and buying new equipment and then reselling it.
Oh,
and so it was, you know, a multi-million-dollar sort of enterprise in that way. You know, the thing about this story that I do like, though, is if it truly did start with a news investigation that like went over the sheriff's department and then ultimately to the FBI, it restores my faith in the media a little bit. So, you know, I do like that.
So we'll believe it whether it's true or not.
Right.
But Allan, you might remember in the 80s, there was at the city of Detroit, they had people cashing big refund checks from the city. The bank put up red flags because you don't get big refund checks from the city taxes, and they city appointed the director of income tax to investigate. Come to find out, he was the one doing it.
There you go.
So once in a while, you gotta have audits or whatever. Because folks do have these schemes and they take, and if you don't catch them, they do it for years.
Yeah.
Wayne County has a long history of corruption over at the road commission, the airport authority, a lot of stuff going on.
They got rid of the road commission because of the people were taking money.
Yep.
So Tiffany, here's a question for you. Would you leave Detroit if you were offered $1 million per child to move to the rural areas like K-Pac?
Oh, well, that's a really tough question.
$1 million?
But that's not $1 million.
Yes, I would, but I love Detroit, you know, and the thing is, you know, I'm a little bit spoiled because we have family property in K-Pac, so I get to enjoy the best of both worlds now anyway.
Well, the reason I asked the question is because in Japan, the government is offering families up to 1 million yen, which actually is only $7,500 per child, to leave the Tokyo-Yokohama area, which of course is the largest metropolitan area in the world. 30 million people are comprising 1 out of every 4 people living in Japan. It's a novel idea because one of the things that they're trying to do is bring younger people into the rural areas where the age of the communities there is quite high. And this will then diversify things not only on age, but hoping that perhaps the aging population will also be better cared for, or at least people will check in on them. Nancy.
Go ahead.
I was just going to try to answer your question in a different way, because similar to this story, yesterday I read a story about a farmer in Japan who was giving his farm away that he had built up over many, many, many years, and his children did not want it. And so he literally was giving it away to anybody who wanted it. And I found myself thinking, do I want to move to northern Japan to run a cattle farm? And so that was a real thought that crossed my mind of reading this article.
They wouldn't let you. They probably wouldn't let you, Tiffany, because
they would not.
This is part of the reason that this is happening in Japan, is because they are extremely anti-immigration. They have never allowed, reasonable immigration, the way other countries have. You can come and visit, you can stay for a while, you can be a teacher, but you cannot become a citizen. And the reason for this is they're racist. I mean, this is a place where you can buy toothpaste that with like a, black
minstrels. I've seen it. They still
the
sell it.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like if they allow but then also, and this is not just unique to Japan. I mean, you've probably heard about like the €1 houses that are available in Sicily, and it's not the Taormina Sicily that you saw on the White Lotus. It's generally these inland towns in Sicily where, and the problem is there's no jobs. There are no jobs. And so perhaps in the era of remote work, you can, you might find some takers who will take $1 million as long as they can go to a small town with, But
if it's $1 million, not 7,000, and there's not enough money to get people to leave Tokyo to go out into the mountains or wherever,
right?
They got to give them more money than that.
They got it's got to be Wi-Fi.
And in Japan, they don't have the average family don't have what, 1 or 2 kids.
Their birth rate is very low because it's a crowded country. At least parts of it are crowded. The places where the jobs are, where people want to leave, like Tokyo and Kyoto. But it's just you might get a few takers, but I think the incentives have to be a lot stronger than that.
Isn't it somewhat of a reverse of what we did in Detroit by offering $500 houses to generate investment into the city? And we had many multimillionaires that came in and bought swaths of it.
Right.
Well, like we got Bedrock developing down on the eastern on the East River front. But I think that farmer Nancy should go ahead and torch the farm, blame it on Godzilla, collect the insurance. Unless, of course, there's a clause in the policy, which I imagine there is in Japan, that nothing is covered if Godzilla comes in or the deductible is too high. Well, Alan, I think we're at that time of the show.
All right, hold on a second. I've got to find our...
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Everybody loves that.
He has now become our honorary 6th member here. So who's got a schmuck for the week?
I'll go.
Go ahead, Adolph.
Okay. Richard Bernstein.
You stole my schmuck.
Yeah, he's a real schmuck. I don't know the guy that was hired as a clerk, but if he passed his fitness or whatever test to become a lawyer, served 14 years in jail. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't rape anybody. He served his time. Now we got people saying that blind people don't need to be judges. That's how stupid is that? So Richard Bernstein is a schmuck. He's an idiot. But he could have handled it better. He could have talked to his colleague and said, it's not a right look, But he comes out and goes crazy. So that's my guy.
I'm really surprised because I know Richard. I'm kind of shocked that because I always have seen him as the most compassionate of judges, particularly, him being blind, and he knows that, he realizes probably if there was an appointed position, he would not have gotten the job. And the people, he's very smart, he's very able. My guess is that some conservative people on the bench were concerned about it, and he decided to step up and be the voice because it would look bad for the conservatives to go after him. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm surprised that he did that. I'm really, because
how do people go to prison? They say, well, we need to teach them a lesson. They need to rehabilitate.
Can I just say something? Because you guys are both assuming that everybody who's watching the show reads the Detroit News. And this is a story that has broken over like the last 2 days. And it started with a piece by George Hunter on the front page of the Detroit News that said, the newly sworn in Justice Kyra Harris Bolden had hired as a clerk this guy named Pete Martell. And Pete Martell is a felon, a convicted felon who did his time. He tried to stick up a convenience store. He fired at a cop. He didn't hit him, but he fired at a cop. He was convicted of assault with intent to do great bodily harm, and he was sent to prison. He did his time. He got out of prison. He turned his life around and became a lawyer, and apparently a very good one, and an advocate for prisoners and for improving prison conditions in Michigan. And now you guys, Tiffany, you're a lawyer. Don't lawyers have to pass this character review?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because I remember when I wrote about that other guy, I can't remember his name, Martinez, I think. Anyway, one of Todd Perkins' partners, he was sweating that out too, because he too had a criminal record that he had to get past. So the Michigan Bar Association thinks this guy is fine. And he was working as a clerk, and Richard Bernstein came out and just blew a gasket over this. And I mean, like, I agree with Allan. I've met him. He's a charming gentleman. He's very smart. He came up, he flatters me, he's really he knows how to work it. But he just blew a gasket over this stuff. And he said that there are some crimes that are so heinous that a person should never be able to work for it as a Michigan Supreme Court clerk. And one of them is firing at a cop. And it just goes contrary to everything I believe about, just criminal justice and rehabilitation. Go ahead.
And it should have worked both ways, because we done had cops that's still on the job that murdered people and did all kind of stuff. So that argument don't hold up. So he is a schmuck. He might be a nice guy, but
whoops.
All right. Adolph's
can I just add one thing, and just to say, from a legal perspective, this has been a hotly discussed topic, to say the least, along the last couple of days. And really, to me, putting the entire subject matter aside, one of the real sad things about this situation is sort of the even further politicization of our court.
Right.
And taking this, sort of coming behind the curtain to air some disputes that I think normally would have been dealt with in private.
And we've also, in this city itself, we've had some of the top criminal defense attorneys go to prison and come back and get their license back to practice. So it's not, it's and like I say, some of the very top criminal attorneys have gone to prison for a year or two.
Well,
I think mostly just a year.
In this case, I mean, what Martell did was he dealt with it the way you would expect an honorable person dealt with it. He fell on his sword. He resigned immediately. He didn't want to take any of the he didn't want to grab the focus off of this new justice, Bolden. And it made me think, Allan, that there's more to this story, that the knives are out for Kyra Bolden, it sounds like. And I know there was some grumbling at the time Whitmer appointed her about her not being qualified because she's very young and she's never been a judge before, et cetera, et cetera. And I wonder if that's not what
it could be, but she ran as a Democratic nominee, really, even though it's
I know. She lost narrowly.
And Bernstein endorsed her. They ran together, really.
Right. Well, that's fine. He said he.
But Nancy, we have had judges that just got out of law school. Helene White, the Levins, and got her appointed to 36th District. She got appointed to Wayne County Circuit. She got appointed to the federal bench. Listen,
I'm not doubting you.
Listen, that is the judges. I mean, the governor, and she wanted her. And I heard rumblings in the community. I know several attorneys who said she's no experience. She was a state rep for a minute, etc. All I can say is she'll grow into the job.
Right. I mean, I'm not doubting any. I'm just speculating on what might be behind this. What was a very out of character explosion by Richard Bernstein, and he is also my schmuck of the week. So that's that.
I have a different schmuck of the week if we want to.
Yeah, Tiffany, go ahead.
There's so many to choose from this week. I had a really hard time, and I actually solicited suggestions, and some suggested Jim Harbaugh just because of our results last week in the game. But I'm going to pick George Santos from the congressman from Long Island, who he has really flown under the radar with all the chaos that's being caused with the speaker's election. But I think we really still need to be talking about this 34-year-old new congressperson-elect who has been lying about his record for some time now on the campaign trail, about his grandparents being Holocaust survivors, his mother losing her life because of 9/11. I think at one point, and Alan, you may appreciate this, he didn't call himself Jewish, but Jew-ish.
And now he's biracial too.
Oh. Yeah, I'm biracial. And the interesting parts, and my point about the media earlier, I read this week that there was a local newspaper called, I think it was the North Shore Leader, that broke this story back in September, and it was not picked up by any of the national media. And so the fact that this guy was able to get elected, is sitting there in Congress, mind you, pretty much by himself through these speaker votes.
He doesn't have a boss.
It's still rather remarkable to me, but it's something that, it's another little problem that the GOP is going to have to deal with once they get, the rest of their problems in some sort of order.
And he may not actually be gay. So
that's right. He was married for some years to a woman.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I mean, seeing him on TV, he's being shunned like an Amish who was discovered to have cable. Alan, you're next.
I would say Matt Gaetz. I mean, I actually love that he's going against McCarthy. One of Trump's former aides said he's just mad at McCarthy. McCarthy didn't issue a press release saying he was okay with Matt Gaetz paying for prostitutes. And then my other person is John James. It just kind of galled me to see John James yesterday nominating McCarthy and using all these shallow sound bites that he's so noteworthy of. He's such a chameleon. I mean, all the way through, in the first time he ran, I love Trump. No, I love Trump more than you.
Suit.
Yeah. Yes. And it's really, when I saw him yesterday, it just made me sick because
a noun, a verb, and a helicopter.
And I'm sure he'll throw in his hat for the Senate race because his ambition is far beyond his talents.
Well, they're going to put him out in front of Kevin McCarthy lawn holding the lantern.
So Alan, given the chivalry that you, of course, always exhibit, we will give one of your two to Nancy, since she had an overlap with Adolph's Schmuck of the Week.
Oh, sorry. Okay, whatever.
All right.
Are you keeping records? I didn't know.
That's how I roll. So my Schmuck of the Week is the late director Franco Zeffirelli.
Yeah.
Yes, it is now come to light that the two stars, the child stars from the 1968 classic movie Romeo and Juliet, Leonard Whiting and Olivia Hussey are suing Paramount. They can't really sue Zeffirelli because he's dead, for $500 million, claiming sexual harassment and sexual abuse and child abuse because he had told them to pose nude in the movie, despite giving them assurances that they would be nude at no time and that they would be wearing flesh-colored undergarments. For anybody who was in middle school, either in K-Pac or in Lapeer, and who was shown the movie, in grade school, they would have noticed that Olivia Hussey was in fact naked, as was Whiting. Whiting's buttocks and Hussey's breasts were on clear display.
Is that the British pronunciation of
no, the British pronunciation? No, the British pronunciation would be arse. Okay. But the fact that Zeffirelli went ahead and lied to a couple of kids, went ahead and brought them into his trust and confidence, is really, really an awful thing, a true shanda. So Zeffirelli, wherever you may be pushing up daisies, you're my schmuck of the week. Well, that concludes another show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the audience. Thank you, Tiffany Ellis. Thank you, Adolph Mongo. And of course, thank you, Nancy Derringer. And last word, as always, Alan.
Drive home safely.
You have a great week, everybody.